Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Friday Vinyl Club, where every day feels like Friday and every album tells a story. I'm Ollie, and this is One for the Vinyl Den. As I'm sure you can tell by now, this isn't your usual host. We are bringing a new format to you where every month, will be sending Papa 5 songs that I found, that I've been enjoying, and that I think he should hear. He gets a week to listen to them, then we sit down, we connect, we talk about the tracks, what we liked, what we didn't like, and ultimately which of these he would press onto a 7-inch record if he had the choice. So this week, our 5 songs are Glistening by Flipturn, Make Me Wonder by Solon Holt, Despierto by Andrea Behar, Love by Wave to Earth, and Dreamwalker by Dog Park. So, Papa, before we dive in, what was your overall reaction to the 5 songs that I sent you this month?
Hello, Ollie, and welcome back to Friday Vinyl Club. It's great to have you back. Yeah, interesting. I feel like you have very deliberately thrown some songs in that that you knew very well that were going to challenge your old papa.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt very intentional from that perspective. I think every song sounded really modern. There were echoes of some of the songs that we've listened to over our musical landscape. And I'll go into what I mean about some of that when we do the individual tracks. But for me, there was a common thread across them, right? There was a common thread of connection, vulnerability, and emotional honesty. None of these are big rock songs. There's no huge rock statements. Everything felt a little bit modern, indie pop, dream pop, is that a thing? And they were all very sort of quiet songs, which I found quite interesting. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised, but I did find it a little bit challenging. One thing that surprised me over the week I was listening is some of these songs, when I listened to them first time round, absolutely grabbed me. And I was like, wow, these sound fantastic. But one thing that I always tend to do, and I think this goes along with listening to vinyl records as well, is repeat listens. How do they stand the test of time? And over the week, actually, things in the first couple of listens that I really liked might have just dropped down the list a little bit, and things that maybe I wouldn't have ordinarily liked maybe grew on me. So yeah, that was my kind of opening impressions. And I think, I don't know, what were you hoping that I'd say
Well,
on
I
these
think
ones?
you're absolutely right on the first thing you said. This first month of introducing this show and introducing this podcast format, I wanted to do something slightly different because most of the music we share together is things that you have grown up listening to throughout your whole life, or it's things that I was listening to with you before I'd moved out. And so a lot of that is artists that have a lot of common themes or are very similar in styles and tastes and things that you're comfortable and familiar with. And I think for this first episode, what I thought might be good is to explore how me growing up in a generation who, although vinyl is picked back up now, a lot of the ways I find music are online, they're on Spotify. And I know a lot of people say you're just shuffling through songs and you're not really listening to whole albums. But a benefit of the access to that much music is it gives you the opportunity to find new artists and things that ordinarily you may not have picked up. And for these songs that I'd chosen, each one reflects a different time in my musical journey, be it places that I've been or genres of music that I myself really enjoy that we've never really connected on. So I thought for the first week, whilst I was well aware in advance that some of these songs probably wouldn't be for you, I thought, the whole point is to give new music a chance together and ultimately see where that takes us.
Yeah, you didn't really need to throw country music in there, though, did you? I mean, let's be honest.
I I don't know. I will be interested to see. I think if anyone who listens to this, if you like country music, leave a comment or a nice review because over the past couple of years, I really enjoy country music, and some of my closest friends, James really enjoys country music, Laura and John, big country music fans, and we can get into that later. It's never landed with you, and I'll be interested to see what you think of the country song that was in here, and maybe over the coming months as more country creeps in, if there's new songs that I find, it may grow on you. We shall see.
I've heard country songs, obviously, that I like over the
Yeah,
years, but yeah, as a genre, it's not something that's grabbed me.
yeah.
All right. I think one question I want to ask then, from a perspective of how you've just introduced these 5 tracks,
hmm
when did pop music stop shouting and start to be more quieter? Because when I'm listening to these 5 songs, they're all very gentle. There's a very emotional and vulnerability sort of vibe around them. But are you actually listening to songs that are a bit louder than these as well, or are you going to subject me to this type of music for the
hmm
rest of this monthly series?
I think it's a really good question. Don't worry, this won't be all you get the opportunity to listen to. I think a lot of pop is still very out there, very punchy, and a lot of that you'll hear on the radio all the time. When we're in the car, you hear that sort of music, and that often seems to be what is pushed more towards the mainstream. I think, especially with these 5 songs that I've put together today, they are songs that I think challenge you. But I think I'll be interested to see if once we come to the end of this and you kind of hear either my connection to the genre or my connection to the country of origin of the artists, whether that will change your mind on how you feel about these songs. Because I think there are a lot of songs that people listen to, and at first glance, maybe they aren't the biggest fan, but over time, whether it's the place you listen to the song or the memories and the emotions you attach to a song can grow on you beyond. So I'll be interested to hear if, after we've had our conversation, if any of that shines true for you, because I know for us, for example, with Crowded House, a band we absolutely love, one of my favorite songs, one of our favorite songs is English Trees. And that is an incredible song for sure, but it's not their most popular song. It's not, I would say it's not a song that a lot of people are going back to as often as we might be. But a large part of that is that I associate that song with a lot of my childhood, with driving in the car with you and with mum and going to gigs. So even though it's a song that we really enjoy and it's a slightly softer song as well, it grows more for us because it has an additional layer of meaning. And I think everyone that's come on your podcast has shown that when they bring on an album. Yes, they're great songs, but everything's got a personal meaning behind it to the person that's listening.
Absolutely. And that's one of the key reasons we do Friday Vinyl Club, isn't it? So yeah, you make a fair point there. Let's start working through these then. And you tell me the background of where you found some of these. Where do you want to start? Shall we start
Of course.
with Flip Turn?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. So the song Glistening is by a band called Flip Turn. I found this song through someone's Instagram story, and someone had included this song over a picture, and I think they were in Italy on a holiday, and they'd included the opening riff. And I think it's a theme actually with a few of these songs that are in this list today. I was hooked hearing that opening riff, and it drew me to listen to that song as a whole. Now, the band themselves are an indie rock band, as they describe themselves. They're based from Florida. It's 3 founding members, and they've expanded since. They all met in high school, and then they grew that band through college. The name Flip Turn actually comes from the bassist who was a swimmer. And when you swim competitively, when you come to the end and you turn and you go back, it's called a flip turn. And I think they quite liked the symbolism of where they've come from and growing up. The song makes me feel quite light, in all honesty. I really, really do love the guitar. That opening riff that's on the song, quite similar to there's a song called Ventura Highway by America, and that has a really beautiful guitar riff that opens up the song. I found that drew me into the song, and the song itself is about past connections and past relationships and things you've missed. And the perspective of the song is wishing they could go back in time and do things differently. But I just found it to be a really beautiful song. The lyrics contrast with what's going on in the background, if you just had an instrumental of this song, I think it would make a lot of people want to dance, or at least, sway or bob their head. But the lyrics themselves are actually a little bit more emotive, and it's just a song that stuck with me, particularly over the past month, and was one I wanted to share with you.
Yeah, I like this one. It was probably one when I first listened to the five that was top of the tree. Gave me the strongest first impression, I think. It's, as you say, it's warm, it's atmospheric. Still enjoyed it after repeat listens, and it definitely held up better than some of the others did. And yeah, I agree with the themes. I pulled out nostalgia, I pulled out holding on to moments and a feeling that, time and youth was slipping away. I could remember, I remember when you were young, when you always used to scream and bawl, and I'd throw you in the baby seat in the back of the car, and the only way to calm you down would be to drive and drive and drive, and sort of like, those times were normally on a night, when Mama was exhausted and I
Yeah,
didn't really know what to do with you because, there was no rule book for being a parent. You kind of have to make your own way. And the only way I could find was driving you at dusk and going into dark. And it was kind of a song that I might find on a best of driving tunes CD that I would be listening
sure.
to in the car. Um, I think the atmosphere of it is very cinematic. I really enjoyed that element of it. And I also sort of thought it does remind me a little bit, out of all of the five that you've given me, of some of the songs that I listened to as I was growing up. There is a little bit of Delamitri, there's a little bit of Crowded House in there. And I think there's also a little bit of U2 in there as well, in that
Okay.
emotional atmosphere. Yeah. So I think they've created a beautiful track. I've really enjoyed it. I'm not going to tell you whether it is going to be the one I'm going to press to my 7-inch
Mm.
vinyl quite yet, but
Keeping your cards close to your
keeping
chest, I
my cards
see.
close to the chest. Yeah, it was. But yeah, out of all of the five, that was easier for me to resonate and connect with.
Absolutely.
Does that surprise you? Was that your expected?
That doesn't surprise me. I did think that was a song that you would find a little easier to get into. And I completely agree with what you say, that as you listen to a song more, the rankings naturally change, things grow on you, things fade in terms of your interest. But I definitely thought this was going to be a song that off the bat would ease you into the playlist as a whole. I mean, have you ever listened to a song in another language before this month?
uh, have I listened to one or have I heard one? They're two different things.
Have you listened?
Because I because I've heard them.
You've heard it on the radio, I'm sure.
I've heard them on the radio. Yeah, absolutely.
That doesn't
I
count.
Why does that not count? I mean, there's songs that I've heard in French. There's songs with lyrics that are quite popular songs, I think, that have got different language lyrics in them. And I'll nod my head and quite like them. Would I necessarily go out and buy a vinyl? No, is the
Okay.
answer. And I'll tell you why. For me, a key part of music is lyrics. And I really attach my emotional side of listening to music to what's being said. So if I fundamentally can't understand, no matter how I'm enjoying the melody or enjoying the sound, if I can't fundamentally understand what's being said, then I'm I'm not necessarily going to go and grab that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and that's a trap because you know that.
It is. I do know that. Yes. But I think it's an interesting wider conversation because obviously the lyrics for us are incredibly important to a song. And I completely understand that when you listen to a song for the first time, if it's in a different language, you may not understand what's going on. You may feel a certain way, it may make you feel something, but you don't understand the lyrics unless you choose after to dive a little deeper. But I think there are so many languages and there are so many artists around the world who are writing incredible music. Often that isn't in English. And I think one thing that is fairly easy to do is stick to what feels comfortable. But if anyone is listening and later on some of the songs aren't in English, do give them a listen because you might be surprised and you might find yourself looking up the lyrics and actually realize that although it is in a different language that you don't speak, you do resonate with the themes or the lyrics or what's going on in the song.
Yeah, and we will put a playlist out for this. So every episode will have a companion playlist. We'll put these 5 tracks out and give us some feedback. I'd really, really be interested to hear what the listener thinks about the tracks that Ollie's thrown out
Just
there.
don't rip my music taste to shreds, please, everyone.
No, that's Papa's job. That's
Yeah.
that's my job. That's my job. Let's go into the track "Love," "Wave to Earth," because I think that's a nice entry
Okay.
point into that one.
Yeah.
Now, tell me where you found this. I think I know what you're going to say, but I'll be interested to have it confirmed.
Yes. So after I graduated uni, the first proper solo trip I ever took was to South Korea. I spent 2 weeks in Seoul, by myself, going around, taking in the culture, the foods, the sights. And prior to that, whilst I'm aware K-pop and K-dramas were growing in popularity in the UK, I knew nothing about any of it. I knew a couple of really, really big bands, BTS and Blackpink, but I didn't know any Korean music. And that trip itself had a really big impact overall on the way I see the world and, what's on the other side of challenging yourself. Because as Papa can attest to, I was a bit nervous to book the flight and to go so far away by myself to a country that I didn't know much about. But since then, Korean music has found its way into my routine listen, honestly, whether that's Wave to Earth or whether that's other bands or artists. And it reminds me of that trip because, walking around the streets in the restaurants, a lot of these songs were being played. And I think that is why Korean music has had a pull on me. I've now got lots of Korean friends, lots of, influences in my life. And that is why I've included this song here. With all that being said, Papa, what did you think of this one?
I really liked the groove. I know that surprised me. I thought it was really, really smooth. And when I first listened to it, I probably put this one down to the bottom of the pile, given that I didn't understand it. And it was that dream poppy. There's a little bit of lo-fi indie. There even feels like there's a bit of jazz in there. I guessed that it was from your Asia Pac adventures. I wouldn't have guessed it was South Korean. I actually thought it might have been Japanese, given you've just been to Japan with your friend Laura. I thought you might have got it from there. Production-wise, wow. I mean, it's unbelievable from that perspective. So, listen to it. First, I was probably listening, as we said, to Flip Turn a couple of times, listening to that on repeat, and I probably didn't give this one the due diligence that I should have done. But when I did, something really interesting happened. I started to hear another artist in this song.
Okay.
And I don't know whether you agree with me, but I'll ask you to listen to this again after this episode and see what you think. But I started to hear one of Daniel Caesar's tracks in there. And the track was Get You. And it was just a groove. It was just the sound of it. And I was like thinking to myself, the backing track could quite easily have been on Freudian, that first Daniel Caesar album that we both loved. And maybe because I didn't understand the words of what was being sung about, my brain was like going, okay, right, well, I really like the music. I really like the groove. And my brain is saying, hang on a second, this sounds like. So I actually went back to Freudian and started listening to a few tracks, and I could see the similarity, which I don't think is a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they're copying or anything like that. But I'm really curious as to whether you hear Daniel's first album and certainly Get You in that. But I also really want to know what the track's about, because I didn't want to go Googling, deep diving, because that would have been that. I think that would have spoiled this episode. What I really want to understand is what were they singing about?
I am surprised that this has grown on you as you've listened a little more. I think Wave to Earth is, in terms of your personal music taste, a really good entry point into the world of music in Korea. This track particularly is one of their most popular tracks. Since the band got together in 2019, they released their first album in 2023, and I've since I think it's 2 US tours they've completely sold out. Really, really big US tours. And a lot of their music as a whole looks to explore the complexities of human connection, relationships, resilience. Naturally, as per the name, this is a love song, but the band themselves have actually turned it away from the traditional looking at personal relationships, and they actually view it as a reflection of the band and their relationships with each other. But as a whole, I'm a big fan of their production, and obviously I have that connection to having been to Korea, but I do really enjoy these albums as something that is a little softer, something that you can put on because, as you say, sometimes you want something a little bit more punchy, but sometimes you do just want something that you can put on, you can relax to, you can enjoy, and I find them to be a band that hits the spot there for me.
Do you see that Daniel Caesar connection?
I think I definitely see the influence. I don't think it's intentional from the band, but I can see where you've drawn the two together.
I'll
Yes.
take that. I'll take that. All right. Now, you put 2 songs in this playlist in a different language to trip me up, but we'll come back to the other one. I think we probably,
Okay.
I need to get this country thing out. We need to talk about this country
Okay.
thing. And midway through the episode, I think is a really good place for me to try and pull you back
Nice try.
from the countryness.
Yeah. So Make Me Wonder by Solon Holt. A bit of background first before we go into the song. I went to visit my really good friend Laura, who's been on this podcast before,
She
in
has. Hi,
Vancouver.
Laura.
Hi, Laura. If you're listening, hi, Laura. In Vancouver. And whilst I was there, I got to spend time with her, her sister, her boyfriend, John, and John's sister. And often we would be driving around in this lovely, lovely Vancouver summer in mid-July, and John would have country music on, or Laura would have country music on. And it was a lot of Shabuzi, Morgan Wallen, really huge names in country. They're probably going right over your head, but they're really, really big country names. And I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed that trip. A lot of those songs remind me of that trip and kind of make me feel that connection and how I felt when I was in Vancouver. But this song in particular is a song that I've found more recently. I'm frequently listening to country music. So is my friend from back home, James. We used to put it on in the car when we would go play paddle when I was living back in Harrogate. But Make Me Wonder by Solon Holt, initially, I wasn't too keen on. It came to me through Spotify, through a country mix, where each week you get recommended new songs. And initially, I wasn't too sure how I felt about the song. But since listening to it more and more, it's really grown on me. And I think he's got a really interesting voice. It's got a really, really nice opening acoustic guitar riff. And the song itself is kind of about a complicated relationship where he's really, really invested, but he feels he's not receiving the same from the other side. And he's kind of portraying this fairy tale romance where if things were up to him, he would be doing things a certain way. And one of the lines is, if it were up to me, our names would be carved in an old oak tree. So he's really painting this fairy tale romance, but he's not feeling the same. And the lyrics are all about don't kind of keep me on this ledge. It's either we're all in or we're all out. And recently he's really been on the rise. He's just finished supporting another big country singer called Megan Maroney, and he's recently signed, and his songs are continuing to grow in popularity. But I thought for me, it's a song I've been listening to quite a lot recently. It strays from some other country like Morgan Wallen, which you may or may not have heard on the radio, which is a lot more upbeat and a lot more punchy, actually, which is funny that you referenced that earlier because I left that off because I thought it might be too punchy for you. But this is definitely on the softer side of country music, and I think it's a good example of the variety that's out there in country. Country is a huge genre, and it goes all the way from things that you may even feel are pop that you'd hear on the radio to softer songs like this.
Firstly, let's talk about the track. First listen, I am a lyrics guy, and this is right down my street. So forget the fact it's a country song. I absolutely loved the lyric, and
Perfect.
yeah. So it was already in a good space.
So you're a country fan. That's fantastic to hear, Dad.
And 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 on top of that, I really love his voice. And the concept of the lyric, the story that he's telling around that uncertainty in the relationship and maybe not feeling reciprocated. If you think of when you were growing up, the big track from Delamitri that Justin Curry wrote, "Kiss This Thing Goodbye,"
Yeah.
same sort of situation. There aren't that many breakup songs that are written about that little piece before the breakup happens. You know, it's somebody deeply unhappy in a relationship. They really, really want it to work, but for whatever reason, it's not, and they're articulating it through song. And I think that horrible silence, you know something's changed in a
Mm.
relationship. And I think this song articulates it well. It didn't quite pass the repeat listening test. And
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is when you listen to Delamitri's Kiss This Thing Goodbye, the reason that I go back to that, aside from the fact that I was listening to that since I was 16 years old. It was one of the first songs that I really gravitated towards on the radio, even though I wasn't in relationships and I didn't understand what was happening. The way it was delivered and the way the song was structured meant that it stuck in my head,
Yeah.
absolutely stuck in my head, and just wouldn't let go. Whereas with this, unless I intentionally go back and find it, it
Mm-hmm.
kind of keeps dropping off my radar. There are other songs ahead of it that I would gravitate towards before it. But that doesn't mean that it's not a good song. And it doesn't mean that I won't look for more Soul and Halt over time. But this one just didn't have that repeatability piece for me. And I'll give you an example of something that's new that is sticking in my head, and it's a country song. And I've been hearing it for the last couple of weeks, and it wasn't on the list, and it's not one that you gave me. But I dug out the name of the girl that's singing it, and it's a girl called, I think it's Ella Langley, and
Can we pause a second?
she's singing about
If
Texas.
Laura, if Laura and John are listening to this, John loves Ella Langley, and I think I know the song you're gonna say. Can I
Right?
guess?
Yeah, go on, see if you can guess.
Is it Choosing Texas?
It's Choosing Texas, right? So I'm I'm listening and I'm like, oh, what's that song? And I'm listening to it closer and closer and closer. And the way she delivers that song makes me think it doesn't matter if it's country. It isn't it's got the pedal steel on, and you'll know in our latest podcast we talked about pedal steel with Max Kilbert from Tom Odell's band. It's got that pedal steel on. It's got all of the things that would define it as country music. But I
Mm-hmm.
listen to it, and the way she delivers it, I'm lost in the lyrics in the same way I was lost in the Delamitri song. And I think that's what just elevates that song above this one from Soul and Halt.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm so surprised that that song has become something that you've been interested in. It's been everywhere at the moment on the radio. I really like that song, and I like a lot of Ella Langley's music. But it's interesting to hear you say that it's something that you feel you keep coming back to because that side of country is something that I didn't think you'd be interested in. For me, I thought you'd hear songs like Choosing Texas and you would associate them with the mainstream or the radio, which are not bad things for an artist at all. But just in terms of where your personal music journey has gone, you've very much strayed from the beaten path.
Well, so maybe you think you know your papa, but maybe your papa's got a few surprises up his sleeve, and maybe you can teach an old dog new tricks. Because I listen to things on in my mind, and I'm no expert, but what I would consider musical merit. And that means that I can look past genres and I can listen to music. Friday Vinyl Club podcast, we've had some really diverse albums. If you'd have told me last year that I would be sitting in the vinyl den listening to Jeff Beck's Wired, which is no lyrics whatsoever and is
Yeah.
jazz fusion, I would have laughed at you. But my mind is well and truly open. And I think the
Well, that's good to
listeners are
hear.
probably hearing that you've put me in a box, son. And
I
I'm
think I
gonna,
might have done, but
yeah, Papa's gonna
what
get
I am
out.
also hearing is that there's still hope to turn you into a country fan.
Let's not kill the vibe, son. Let's not kill the vibe, son. All right, let's move on to the other song that you threw at me that has got lyrics in that I don't understand.
Despierto by Andrea Bejar. This is a song in Spanish. Mexican-born artist. She sings in Spanish and English. And whilst this song is fully in Spanish, I think she has a really wonderful voice. And another artist that, whilst we do like their lyrics and everything else about them, we really admire the voice of is Hannah from London Grammar. And while these voices are completely different in where they go and what they sing, that was the initial pull for me to this artist. In a similar way that for London Grammar, the pull was Hannah's voice. The song itself, she's described as being inspired by the feeling of comfort that you have in unconditional love. She says she has a really, really strong relationship with her grandma. And so that's how this song came about. And a lot of the imagery and the themes that come through are kind of rooted in nature. So using the sun or the ocean or the trees to describe your family, your relationships, and things like that. And it's all about, loving someone in a way that being around them feels like home, whether that's family or friends. And I just think it's a really sweet song. The guitar that plays throughout the entire song was her friend Diago, who came up with that. And I think despite the really, really simple production on the song, it's a really, really sweet little piece of guitar, a really lovely bit of acoustic guitar. And I'll give a shout out to Laura's sister Eleanor, actually, because Eleanor is a really big fan of Andrea too. And we didn't know this. We both knew the song before we knew each other were a fan. And I think it just goes to show that regardless of where you are in the world, you can find artists and shared interest. And I think that's been really sweet.
Yeah. I think you've captured and you've summed this song up well. The guitar playing, I was really drawn to, and the overall atmosphere. I did get the sort of Latin influences. There's a bit of indie in there as well. First listen on this one didn't really jump out, just really gentle, just really quiet. It kind of made me feel like I was at home. Do you know what I mean? When I started listening to it, and I mean that from a perspective of it, I found a little bit of comfort in this track.
Yeah.
When I listened to it, I felt, it had that sort of overarching feeling of being somewhere safe, and I
It's
didn't
quite
understand.
soothing.
Yeah, soothing. That's a nice word, and that melody communicated such emotion. It's definitely one that got better with repeated listening. But for the first sort of half of the week when I was listening to these tracks, this was one that I barely touched. Does that surprise you?
It surprises me that it's grown on you, but it doesn't surprise me that it was towards the bottom of the pile. And I think all of these songs are great songs. It doesn't surprise me that at the start, the two non-English songs naturally sank further down the list. And I don't think that's anything on you. I think that is just a case of your connection with music is very much through the lyrics. So if you don't understand the lyrics, it's a lot harder to connect to a song.
It is, but I do think, I got something out of it. But hopefully that's a little bit of a surprise for you. But it took a while for that one to weave its way into my brain. Whereas the next song, or the last song we're going to talk about, was Dreamwalker by Dog Park, which
Yes.
probably had the biggest energy on the playlist. And from the start off, that was probably, for most of my early listens on this playlist, this was the one that I may have brought to this conversation as being the one we would press to vinyl. But
Okay.
I'm not revealing just yet.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. Of all the songs, it's the punchiest. They are an East Coast emerging rock band, indie rock. They describe themselves as. They all met in college and initially were in jazz bands and college bands, but they never really felt that they'd fit in. And so they transitioned into their own music and apparently would play 4-hour long sets at parties around their college at the University of Richmond. And that is how they kind of built up their style, built up the way they play. And there's a lot of energy in this song. I find this to be a song that gets me up and makes me want to dance. And again, it follows those themes of romance, but I would say maybe in a slightly Delamitri-esque way. if you just listen at what's going on behind the song, but the lyrics can be portraying something completely different. And I found that with this song as well. The lyrics themselves are completely different from what feels like it's going on in the background.
I totally agree with you there. Modern alternative guitar band. I also felt there was some old and some relatively new in there. So from my perspective, I could hear a bit of Stereophonics was the first
Yeah.
band that I kind of picked out. There's maybe a little bit of Two Door Cinema that we used to listen to in the vinyl den as well on this one. I really like the driving beat with this.
Yeah.
So like the first few listens on repeat listening, it kind of held up as well. It wasn't like the flip turn one that kind of started to drift off. I could find new things in this particular one.
Okay.
But there are some, as I say, there's a kind of a late 90s British indie feel to this
Yes.
one. And I really picked up on that. And so it would be no surprise that I gravitated towards this one because of growing up through that period and going all the way through the Britpop period, even though this isn't a British band, there's certainly that indie feel there. And I felt themes around restlessness, escapism, all sort of woven into this one. But it was a track that I quite liked. And the first time you gave me the playlist and this one popped on, this was probably the first one that I was drawn to.
That's not a surprise to me. Funnily enough, your reference to the 90s, when I was kind of looking online and doing a bit of digging before we sat down together, I found a comment where someone had said they hadn't realized that this wasn't a cover of a song from the 90s by a newer band. They'd assumed that, the band here had covered something that was from the 90s rather than it being a newer release. So I think that really does speak to, as you said, that 90s influence on this track.
All right, so that's all 5 tracks. Before we go to the killer question, of my responses, what has pleasantly surprised you and what has disappointed you?
I don't think anything's disappointed me. I think the whole point of this for me is just to share things with you. Sometimes you're going to like them, sometimes you're really not going to like them. But I think that's part of the fun. There's a lot of music that you listen to that you're a big fan of that you are well aware that I'm not as keen on. And it's all about just sharing new music, things I find, and who knows, maybe we find a new artist we like together and we get to go see them. I have been surprised by how much the foreign or the non-English songs have resonated with you. And I've also been surprised by the fact that Ella Langley has been name dropped by you on the podcast. I did not see that coming, but it's a pleasant surprise.
Am I getting Papa points?
You might be.
Hey! All right. So, son, ask me the question.
So, if you could only keep one, and we were going to press you your very own 7-inch of one of these songs, which song is going into the vinyl den?
Well, I think the biggest surprise of this isn't going to be the song that I choose. It was how my favorite changed over repeated listening. And if you'd asked me after the very first listening, I would have probably gone for Dog Park or Flip Turn. However, the one that I
Okay.
am going to press for Friday Vinyl Club 7-inch in the den is Despirito.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Despierto.
So let me tell you why. This one didn't immediately jump out. It's in a foreign language. I put it right down to the bottom of the pile. I almost disregarded it. But it was the repeat listening test. And this completely surprised me because every time I came back to it, it grew. And it got to a point where I stopped analyzing it. I stopped comparing it to anything. And I just listened, even without understanding anything she's singing, right? I just felt the emotion in there. And something changed with me while I was living with these songs. And I guess that's the beauty of discovery, right? That's why we do Friday Vinyl Club. But sometimes the quietest song is the one that stays with you. And this one was there. It didn't shout to be the loudest, but it just absolutely stayed with me. And when we talk about putting a 7-inch in the vinyl den, it is about me having it for repeated listening and going and intentionally listening to it. And that's exactly why this record deserves a place in the record den. So for episode 1, that's my choice. What do you think?
Wow. I'm really surprised. I I think I knew that Flip Turn and Dog Park, their songs they have common themes with a lot of the music you listen to. But I'm really surprised that having lived with the songs and playing them and just going about your life with them that this one's pulled through. But I'm actually really happy it has, because Andrea has an amazing catalogue of songs that are in English. She's released an album as well. She has songs in English, songs in Spanish, some that are in both. And hopefully, this might be the start of a new artist that when she does eventually tour, we manage to go see. Or when she releases a vinyl, we manage to grab it, because currently she doesn't actually have anything released that I've been able to find.
I'd love to see her live. And yeah, thank you for sharing those with me, because, over the years, you've passed music to me, I've passed music to you. Music's been a real bridge in our relationship. And now you're living in Manchester and globetrotting the world. I think you passing these new songs to me has extended that and really, really made me happy. And I'm glad that I've been able to surprise you with this one in a good way, because it surprised me as well. And yeah, I really appreciate that.
And I think one thing that's important is, whilst we really love these songs, it's also really important to support the artists behind them. So if you do find that a song resonates with you, the important thing to do, and the thing that we often do, is you then look through their back catalogue, you look at their albums as a whole, and you kind of dig a bit deeper, because one song from a singular artist is never really going to be enough to get a full spectrum of how they perform, the way they play, and things like that. And a big thank you to everyone that's listened. We really, really appreciate it. We love doing this and talking about music and sharing our music memories, but what we love even more is the fact that everyone wants to get involved and share their own music memories with us. We've discovered some really, really great artists, and hopefully, Papa, did you enjoy today's episode?
Absolutely loved it. And I can't wait for my next 5 songs for my homework.
Me neither. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you again next month.
Bye.
Bye.